Since 2015, Jared Stillman has rocked Nashville sports.
That team freaking stinks.
And now he's back. The takes are hotter than ever.
I mean, let's be honest, he just can't coach.
Welcome to Stillman and Company.
Stillman and Company on the 440 Sports Network. It is Postgame Live, presented by Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Again, like and subscribe to the Stillman and Company page. Postgame Live. Texans win on a walk-off field goal, 16-13, as the Titans fall to 1-9. They face Seattle, who right now is playing the LA Rams. They face Seattle next week at home at Nissan Stadium. Titans lose. And I'm going to start off by saying this. When it comes to just the fact that they lost again and everything else, there is going to be plenty of time for moaning and groaning and complaining and everything else that we will probably do collectively, certainly that I will do. There is plenty of time for that. Right now, I'm going to start off by saying this was probably a positive result for the Titans. And what I mean by that is it was an interesting game. The Titans defense played well enough to keep it close, granted against Davis Mills. The Titans offense was inept for 99% of the game, but we have to take that with a grain of salt. The Texans have the number one defense in the NFL, and it was an entertaining game, and Cam Ward made that one throw at the end of the ball game where he hit Chigakonkwo that set up the touchdown. And so it gave you a chance to enjoy Sunday, where it wasn't one of these just ass kickings where we're sitting there in the middle of the third and fourth quarter saying, oh my God, how much longer do we have to go? But instead, we look at it and we say, hey, entertaining game, a positive sign from Cam, not the game, because I don't think that the game was a positive step for Cam, but the throw to Chigakonkwo, I thought that one play and the 95-yard touchdown drive was a positive step for Cam. And they still lost, and they still hold the number one pick. And again, holding the number one pick is so important because while I don't know who is, personally, I don't know who is going to be desperate enough to trade up for Fernando Mendoza or for whomever. I don't know, but I can say that it's better to have that number one pick and to have the ability to trade out of it. Or if there is some sort of Myles Garrett type player, which it doesn't sound like Reuben Bain is that kind of player, but if there's that kind of player, you can draft him. If there's a great Hall of Fame can't miss player, you get to pick him. If you're picking first, you get to dictate terms as to what you're going to do in the draft if you have the number one pick. So winning today would have been bad. Winning today would have hurt your draft stock. And draft stock is important. So I actually thought today the end result was actually good for the Titans. It was, again, good for the Titans that Cam Ward made a big boy, grown-up quarterback throw because he has not made enough of those so far this season. And it was a good thing that the Titans tied the game in the fourth quarter and that they got the drive. And, again, the way that you really judge young quarterbacks in the end is by what they do on third down and what they do, in the fourth quarter, 2-minute drill, etc. And Cam did lead a 95-yard touchdown drive in which he had his most impressive scramble, I think, this season, and then had the throw on third down where he knew he was going to take a shot and he knew he had to put the ball out there for Chig. And the thing about Cam and him being as inaccurate as he is, he's going to miss most of those throws. The deep balls down the field, like the one he threw to Chig, the one that he missed all throughout the game, whether it was Kinsey or whomever, he's going to miss that throw most of the time. But every now and then, he's going to put it in the right spot. And Cam, on that one throw, put it into the right spot. And so they got a positive sign. Again, not the greatest, not the most important, but they got a positive sign, which was good from Cam in the end. They can build off of that. They can pretend like they have every single effing week this season when Cam plays like shit. And they just say, well, Cam's working really hard and we're growing from this. And you don't have to say that. You now have a play that was a game-changing fourth quarter play that you can now point to and say, hey, that throw he made to Chigakonkwo, that was a big-time play. So that's good. And the fact that you lost in the end, that's also good. That doesn't give anybody any false hope that any of these coaches are worth retaining. It doesn't make us sit back and say, oh, well, now do we want the Titans to win more games? No, you want the number one pick. I'm just going to tell you, you want the number one pick, period. So that's the first thing. When it comes to this game, Titans-Texans, I mean, I am not upset that the Titans lost. And I don't know if you guys are upset that the Titans lost. I don't know if, you were sitting there at the end when Davis Mills leads the Texans right down the field and they kick a field goal. And again, they were running the ball with Woody Marks, whoever the fuck that is. And they're running the ball with Woody Marks and they're setting up the field goal and they come out and they make it. Like, I don't know if you saw that and just your heart broke a little bit because your team lost, or if you saw that and you said, you know what? That's good. 1-9 is good. And next week, probably be 1-10. Want to see positive signs of growth, but I don't want to see this team win a couple of games and end up picking fourth or end up picking seventh in this year's draft. So that's the first thing. That's a good thing. The second thing is, and I know he hit the throw down the sideline to Chick. I always pride myself on being fair, even if you don't think that I am fair. Cam Ward sucks. I mean, again, Houston had the number one defense in the NFL. And I don't want to pretend like that's not a real thing. They are the number one defense. Great pass rushers. One of the better corners in the NFL. Not that I care about corners, but one of the better corners in the NFL. I am aware of the fact that the Titans roster is not very good. Their top receivers, Chimere Dike, he went out with an injury. Alec Iomanner went out with an injury, and they're not even that good. They were out there playing with Mason Kinsey for most of the fourth quarter. I mean, it's Van Jefferson and Tajay Spears, and J.C. Latham's deciding he's going to get a false start, once a drive, which that pick looks worse and worse every week. But, we'll get to that at some point. And so I understand the Titans are bad. And I understand that football is a team sport. And so when it comes to why isn't Cam playing well, the excuse of Cam's team is A, at times somewhat valid, but also B, is something that people will like to use as a crutch. And that's fine. But I'm just telling you, what I see week in, week out, I see a quarterback who's not good enough to be a franchise quarterback. And I don't see enough signs that tell me, hey, Jared, he's got that special juice in him, and there it is on display. That was one throw, a 39-yard completion. Cam finished with 194 yards on the day on 37 attempts. Like if you throw 37 times in the NFL, you should probably average around what? 259 yards, 270 yards passing. For instance, Davis Mills threw it 41 times and threw for 274. Cam sucks. And not only that, the things that drove me crazy about Cam going into the draft and things that the Titans seemed to not think was a big deal and things people just kind of dismissed, just shrugged off and said, oh, no, it'll be fine. his accuracy, his size, his mechanics, the fact that, again, I don't know about you, but Cam is 6'2". Now, that is taller than me, and that is taller than most of you. But 6'2" is not necessarily tall when you're talking about the quarterback position. It's not Kyler Murray, who's really 5'8". I know this because at the Super Bowl a couple of years ago, I was getting my credential. And at the same time I was getting my credential, Kyler was like in the next ticket booth getting his credential. And I remember looking at Kyler and thinking, like, this guy's as tall as me. And I'm 5'8", 5'9". So that's what Kyler is. Cam 6'2". 6'2" is better than 5'9". But it's not big for a quarterback. It's not Peyton Manning. It's not Tom Brady, who's 6'5". It's not Matthew Stafford. It's not Eli Manning. It's not, again, Joe Burrow when you consider number 1 overall picks. Trevor Lawrence. These guys are all 6'4", 6'5". The reason this is important is because if I see Cam throw a fucking sidearm pass one more time from the pocket where he drops the ball lower than 6'2" and he tries to throw it over defensive linemen who are 6'4" and 6'5", that's never going to work. And then the accuracy. The accuracy is so bad. And there were a couple of plays today where I saw him, again, he threw a check down at one point to Tajay Spears, in which it was, I want to say, a second down, and he turned around and he threw that check down to Spears, and Spears had to run back to the ball because it was like 2 yards behind him. So Spears had to go back, get the ball, and then cut it upfield. And Spears gained something like 6 yards on the play. And I'm like, that's really more like a 9-yard play because the ball sent Spears backwards. And there were far too many throws today when it came to Cam where I'm like, that is just not an accurate pass. And I don't understand how he's going to get more accurate. He had a throw to Kinsey today. And I'm not talking about the one everybody's thinking about, where he threw the ball, again, he was looking for Kinsey, and Kinsey was wide open down the field, and he threw the ball like 5 yards behind Kinsey, and Kinsey got turned around. I'm not talking about that play, which, again, is a play that needs to be made. But I'm talking to a throw on the sideline to Kinsey, where the TV broadcasters, Mark Schlereth's like, Kinsey gets a hand on it. He's got to bring that in. And I'm like, Kinsey gets a hand on it. He's got to bring it in. What? That ball, he's wide fucking open. Put the ball on the receiver and he'll catch it. If you're going to ask Mason Kinsey to make acrobatic catches, I'm here to tell you, that's never going to happen. Never, ever, ever. And so, again, I can't tell you what the Titans are going to do because I don't know. The Titans are convinced, or at least I am convinced, that Mike Borgonzi is convinced that Cam Ward, no matter how bad it looks this year, no matter how bad the mechanics are, no matter how bad the accuracy is, no matter how bad, I am convinced that Mike Borgonzi thinks Cam Ward is going to become Patrick Mahomes. Now, I think that line of thinking is stupid, but I'm telling you that that's what I think. I think Mike Borgonzi thinks he's going to be an absolute superstar. I got to see some more than just one throw. Like, I've got to see it. Again, the throw to Chig, that's the kind of throw that if you're going to win games for your team, you're going to have to make in the fourth quarter, down by a touchdown, facing a 3rd and 16. You're going to have to stand in there and you're going to have to basically wing it and say, hey, I'm putting it in a spot. I think Chig's going to get there. I think this is where he's going to be. And now I need Chig to go beat the defender. And then I need Chig to go up, get the ball. And that worked. So that was nice to see, but you got to do that more than one time. Again, every time Cam makes one play, it's like the boohoo Cam crew. And I think that most Titan fans, again, maybe I'm projecting my own feelings here, but I feel like most Titan fans are rather unimpressed with Cam. and probably uninspired by Cam. And I say this with all due respect because I do believe that Titan fans, when Cam got drafted, said, hey, I hope this works out. I am hoping for the best with Cam Ward. Taking him number one, they probably got into the 0-star recruit story and thought that was a good thing and said, you know what? Maybe this can be our guy. Mike Borgonzi comes from the Chiefs. He was there when they drafted Patrick Mahomes. Maybe that can propel the Titans into one day drafting the right quarterback. But I think now that we've got games, most Titan fans have watched the games and they're like, yeah, I'm not impressed with Cam Ward. And then there's probably about 35% of the fan base, 30% of the fan base, and a lot of the homer media. And I'm not talking about guys like Kaharski or Buck or, people like that, but I'm talking about like fans that become bloggers and whatnot. They're like, oh, no, nothing is ever Cam's fault. Those people, that's like 35%, maybe 25%, 30%, something like that. That is just no matter what happens, it's not going to be Cam's fault, and Cam is actually great, and no quarterback could come into this team and actually win football games, which I don't agree with. For my thing, I need a quarterback who's accurate. Like, I need a quarterback that when he goes to throw the ball and he's trying to put it somewhere, he can put it there. And I don't think Cam will ever be able to do that. And so I don't know what to make of today. Like, was it a step forward for Cam? I don't think so. I mean, he did have the one big throw, but they had 14 first downs for the game. They averaged 4 yards per play. So, again, if you want to live and die by the Chig throw and you want to say, Jared, did you see that throw? You had that moment. Now, again, every quarterback that plays in the NFL has some highlight reel-like throws. That includes Will Levis last year, who was terrible. Bo Nix has had some highlight reel throws. But if you're expecting competent quarterback play, you're not getting it right now. And I don't feel like you're getting really any improvement except for that one throw, which, again, that's my thing about Cam. Is that because Cam is always throwing off of platform, that means that when he throws off platform, there's a chance he'll connect. The problem is that far too often he won't connect. If you had Cam run that play 10 times, I think he hits Chig twice. I'm not going to say I think it's all luck because I think Cam had to make the decision on 3rd and 16 of, I'm going to stand here for a couple of seconds and then I'm going to throw the ball. And this may not be what I want this. I mean, this ball, I'm going to throw it and I got to hope Chig gets open and that's what a lot of coaches do. They tell the quarterbacks like, hey, you got to put it in a spot. You got to hope your guy gets there. But if you were to ask him to throw that ball in that spot 10 times, I think he puts it there too. So 20%. I don't want to live and die by 20%. Now, when it comes to the better quarterbacks, if I were to say, okay, Aaron Rodgers in his prime, which is not necessarily fair, but Aaron Rodgers, how many times does he put the ball there out of 10? 9. Drake May right now, how many times does he put the ball there? And that's the difference. I thought for the most part, Cam did a good job not turning the football over, though he did have another fumble. And he's got to stop turning the ball over. You know, whether it's fumbles, whether it's interceptions, and I know he hasn't thrown a ton of picks this year, he's got to stop turning the ball over. And I do wonder if they, again, drafted for exception because he was a 0-star recruit, Jared. And I do wonder if that drafting for exception ends up now being an issue with his hand size. Because I understand there was pressure. There's always going to be pressure when you play the number 1 defense in the league. which is what the Texans were. With those edge rushers, you're always going to face pressure. I don't give a shit who your tackles are, but the Titans' tackles aren't great. And so when you're going against those two guys, it's always going to be somewhat of an issue. I say this because I do believe even when they get pressure, you've got to protect the ball. And Cam Ward, again, fumbled the football earlier today. Now, there was one thing, again, going over the non-Cam Ward related stuff that I want to hit on, and then we will get to your reaction here on the program. And boy, Witty Banner in the chat. I love Witty because he's always listening and watching the show. But, I mean, my God, Witty, what are you watching, baby? This team fucking stinks, and Cam fucking stinks. And it's like, no. But that's every time. It's always no. Okay, I do want to talk about Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical here on the program. You know I love Hiller. They take great care of my home. They can do the exact same for you. Hiller has taken care of my home for years. Ever since I bought my first home in 2018, I've been a Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical customer. They've been in business since 1990, and they are family-owned and operated with 100% satisfaction. Of happy you'll be, or the service is free. If a customer is not pleased with the work performed, Hiller will make it right. Learn more at happyhiller.com. Professional, experienced, trustworthy technicians that come into your home and leave it clean and better than they found it. Care is the core value at Hiller, where they believe that when they care about others, everybody wins. They'll take care of the customer on every job, every time. Hiller, proud supporters of the Nashville Predators, the Vanderbilt Commodores, and the Tennessee Volunteers. That's Hiller. Call the Happy Face Truck today. So if you are a subscriber or a member at paulkaharski.com, then you will get the Blake Bedingfield breakdown every single week. After the game on Mondays, the former Titans director of college scouting, Blake Bedingfield, writes an article at paulkaharski.com. And one thing that I am actually fascinated by to see Blake break down tomorrow is the play of J.C. Latham, because I do want to discuss the play of J.C. Latham. I do want to discuss, and again, we'll get to the team here that's outside of Cam, but I do want to discuss J.C. Latham because J.C. Latham was the 7th overall pick, and the Titans took him over Brock Bowers. They took him, I believe, over every single defensive player in the 2024 NFL draft. Now, we know the guy who took him, he's been fired. We also know that the guy who convinced Bran Carthon to take J.C. Latham, Bill Callahan, he's gone. And so it's not as if you can go back and undo the pick of J.C. Latham. But here's the truth. The Titans need J.C. Latham to be their right tackle because they have far too many issues and far too many holes that they do not need to go searching for another tackle this offseason. Because let's say you trade back and you trade from 1 to 5 and you pick up 2 second-round picks and a first in the next year's draft, and you do that. Well, you need receivers. You need pass rushers. You need a tight end. You need corners. If J.C. Latham is going to suck this bad, and Latham was awful today, if you're going to suck this bad, now you have to go find a right tackle. And that's going to be a big problem. And the reason I'm fascinated to see what Blake Bedingfield has to say about J.C. Latham is because I worry that with the speed rushers that Houston has, specifically Will Anderson Jr. Now, Danico Autry, we've watched Danico for a long time. Danico up there in age, but he seems to never really lose a step. Will Anderson is the real speed. And that J.C. Latham false start, that's him trying to cheat the count. That's him knowing the ball's about to get snapped. Let me try to get a brief second up here so I can hold in pass protection because I'm too big and too fat to be playing tackle against a good speed rusher. And if I take you 7th in the draft, I need you to be at right tackle, and I need to be able to put you up there against a Will Anderson and one of the better pass rushers in the NFL. That's what I need out of my right tackle. I need that out of my right tackle if I took him in the 3rd round. but I absolutely have to have it. If I take you 7th in the draft, I need to stick you at tackle, and I need to never worry about you again. And J.C. Latham is right now trouble. And I remember when they took him, and Trevor Maddich was talking about J.C. Latham, and Rand Carthon went to the podium and said J.C. Latham's going to play left tackle, and Trevor Maddich was like, I don't know about that one, boys. And Trevor was like, I actually think Latham might be a better guard than he is a tackle. It's because he's too big and fat. Look at Saban's offensive linemen at Alabama for the most part. And I know there are some good ones in there. Ryan Kelly's had a nice NFL career. But for the most part, Saban's offensive linemen at Alabama have not panned out. And the reason I believe, and this is why, again, his interior offensive linemen sometimes make it, like a Cam Jurgens. But the reason why is because Saban just gets them so big and so fat. And that's fine in college football. But in the NFL, you're going up against defensive linemen where there are 4 NFL athletic style defensive linemen and not just one. And so you can get away with that in college. We're just too big. We're just too fat. You can't get away with that in the NFL. And I've always worried about that. And I think that's the issue with J.C. Latham, is that he's too big and he's too fat. And then unlike Penei Sewell, who's an absolute freak for how he moves at his size, J.C. Latham doesn't move that fast. So when it comes to the Latham thing, I am worried that today was a sign with J.C. Latham that against the better edge rushers, he's going to have to cheat to get out there. You're going to get a lot of false starts. You're going to get holding. And as that happens, he's going to build a reputation in the NFL for the false starting and the holding, and they're going to call it more. So I am worried to death about J.C. Latham. And today's game was not good at all for J.C. I will give Cam Ward credit for this. I don't buy into the notion of this team is so bad, no other quarterback could be any good, whatsoever. And so the fact that they're 1-9 is not a reflection at all of anything that Cam Ward has or has not done. I don't believe that. Now, do I believe that the Titans would be a Super Bowl contender if Matthew Stafford was their starting quarterback? No, I don't. But do I think the Titans would be a lot better, even with this roster, if Matthew Stafford was the Titans quarterback? Yeah, I do. Because if Matthew Stafford was the Titans quarterback, passes wouldn't get batted down at the line. He's big and he understands throwing lanes. Because every time that they're about to blitz, Matthew Stafford would see it ahead of time. Maybe something Cam's not doing. When Matthew Stafford throws a check down, like he's thrown 8,000 times in his career, Matthew Stafford is not throwing the ball 3 yards behind where the back is out in the flat for the check down. But the overall point of the talent of this football team is, I think, worth being intellectually honest about. And this is a bad team. They can't run the ball. Now, I think some of the reason they can't run the ball is because Cam is so inaccurate with the deep ball that nobody ever has to back up. So you can just kind of bring everybody up there, and you can allow a guy like Azeez on their team to go out there and make some tackles. But they can't run the ball. Tony Pollard has clearly lost a step. I do not expect Tony Pollard to be on the team next year. There's just not a lot of really good NFL players. There's just not a lot, in my opinion, of NFL players on the team. NFL caliber players. Now, all 5 guys on the offensive line, even though I think Cushenberry is overpaid, and I think Zeitler is old, and I think J.C. Latham is too fat, and I think Dan Moore is average, all 5 guys on the line are starting NFL players. I don't think Chigga, Conquo, or Gunnar Helm are starting NFL players. I think they are complementary tight end pieces. At wide receiver, Calvin Ridley, who got hurt again. Calvin Ridley is an NFL starting player, but Calvin Ridley's always hurt, so you can't count on him. And at receiver, I don't know how many NFL starting caliber players they have. Some people will want to say that Chimere Dike is an NFL starting caliber player. I'm not totally convinced of that, but that might be your best bet. The reason I say this is I do agree that to a certain extent, the talent around Cam is really bad. And that if Cam had better players, Cam would look better. I agree. But you also have to remember, it's really hard to get a bunch of good players in the NFL. And the way you get those better players, or the way I think the Titans would have gotten the better players, is if they had traded it out of the Cam Ward pick and then gotten multiple picks to replace those spots where they need starters. So I see both sides of the argument. And I've said this when it comes to quarterbacks, and it comes to quarterbacks in the draft. Because my way of doing things, the type of quarterback that if I ran a team I would want to win with, is not the same type of quarterback that I know you can win with Josh Allen, or that I know you can win with Lamar Jackson. The type of quarterback that I look at and I'm like, that's the kind of guy I want to be my quarterback, is Justin Herbert, Joe Burrow, Sam Darnold, Matthew Stafford, the big, strong pocket passer. That's who I like. And granted, those guys don't win the Super Bowl every year, but that's, again, what I like. But when it comes to Cam, at some point, Cam does have to make some of the plays on a consistent basis or show some sort of improvement that would at least make you think, hey, get some decent players around this guy and he'll be able to elevate a roster. And I just haven't seen really any of that this year. Again, the Texans scored 16 points today. And I understand Cam's a rookie, and I understand Cam's team is bad. But when you score 16 points, or when your defense gives up 16 points, that's when you have to go out there and make a play that makes a difference to win the game. Cam fumbled at the beginning of the fourth quarter, and it led to a 9-yard drive in which the Texans kicked a field goal to go up 13-6. That turnover cost you 3 points. How many did you lose by? You lost by 3. So, big picture, long story short, I understand the defense of Cam Ward, and it's a fair defense. But at the same time, he needs to start making some chicken salad out there, because they picked him to save this franchise. And you can pretend like they didn't pick him to save the franchise. When you draft a quarterback inside the top 5, but especially at number 1 overall, you are drafting the quarterback to save the franchise. Nobody is drafting a quarterback number 1 overall. And I say this with all the respect in the world. No one is drafting a quarterback number 1 and hoping for Ryan Tannehill. Again, Ryan Tannehill had a very good career in the NFL. Ryan Tannehill had a very good 3-4 seasons with the Tennessee Titans. And Ryan Tannehill had some of the best offense, if not the best offense, that 2020 year that we've ever seen with the Titans. But nobody's drafting Ryan Tannehill with the first pick. When you use the first pick on a quarterback, you're looking for Joe Burrow. You're looking for John Elway. You're looking for that great franchise-carrying quarterback. And again, if Cam can't throw an accurate pass, how can he be a great carry-the-franchise quarterback? So that's where I sit right now. And I know what's going to happen. This is the depressing part for me. And again, today's game, of the Titan games that we've had this season, today's game, I would say, was probably the most entertaining. I mean, the Arizona game, they won that game, and it was so wild and crazy at the end. But this was like, they were in this game the whole time. Now, the Arizona game was on its path for it to be an absolute blowout, like all the other games. This game was a legitimate, ugly division November type of football game. And, it all came down to the end and you just kind of came out on the wrong side of it. That's fine. But at the same time, I was sad watching the game. And what made me sad, and maybe I'm wrong about this, and the Boohoo Cam Society on Twitter will be able to take a victory lap win, and if this happens. But when push comes to shove, I don't think Cam Ward is going to change the franchise. And I don't think that this organization will have the resources in that 3-year period that you give a quarterback in order for Cam Ward to prove that he actually was worth the first overall pick. Now, Caleb Williams went to a team that was also picking number 10 in the draft that year. Caleb Williams went to a team that was going to spend a bunch of money in free agency and has done that 2 years in a row. And Caleb Williams went to a team that didn't have the number 1 pick. And so the Bears have said, hey, we're going to invest in Caleb. And Caleb has the talent for Chicago to turn things around. Drake May. New England gets a coach in there and they spend a bunch of money in free agency. They get him Stephon Diggs, and Drake May has the ability and the talent to take advantage of that. I'm not convinced Cam does. But because they took him with the number 1 pick, no matter what he does this year, we're going to look at Cam Ward and say, and I say we, but I should say they are going to look at Cam Ward and say, well, we got to build this around Cam, for Cam, coach that works with Cam. They did the same stuff with Mariota. We got to build the team around Marcus. We got to get the coaching around Marcus. You do that when you take a quarterback that high. I feel like it's all a waste of time. I feel like it's a waste of time. I feel like it's a waste of resources. I feel like it's a waste of optimism. I feel like it was a waste of another coaching contract because they're going to hire a guy to coach up Cam. And it's not going to work. Because Cam just doesn't have the ability to be good in the NFL consistently. So that's where I get depressed by this is I don't look at this and say, okay, go out in free agency. I don't look at it and think, hey, we're going to hire a coach and then we're going to trade the pick and we're going to spend in free agency. And this time next year, you won't see a perfect team, but you'll see a better team. And I use the New England Patriots as the example, right? They were terrible last year. They spent a bunch of money in free agency. And now, instead of just having a bunch of bums out there is Milton Williams and there is Stephon Diggs. And look, they're getting by with Robert Spillane and Jack Gibbons as their inside backers, which at some point is going to be an issue. But when you're playing the Jets every week, it's not the end of the world. So they've figured out a way. And that's what I would hope the Titans will be able to do. But if Cam doesn't have the ability to be good consistently, then none of it matters. And that's what I believe when it comes to Cam. And so I look at everything and I'm trying to allow for the possibility that I might be wrong and that Cam Ward might actually be a franchise quarterback. The same way that Troy Aikman had a terrible rookie year, Hall of Fame quarterback. John Elway, terrible rookie year, Hall of Fame quarterback. Josh Allen, his first 2 years, he couldn't complete a pass. League MVP, eventually he'll go into the Hall of Fame. I'm hopeful that's the case. I just don't believe that's what's going to happen because I just don't think Cam's good enough. And I think the Titans got too caught up in the intangibles. They got too caught up in, oh, no. When you sit down with Cam and you talk to Cam, he is just the best. He was a 0-star recruit, and he went to Incarnate Word, and then he went to Washington State, and then he went to Miami, and look at him now. This is why we have to have this guy. He's a great leader. He's a great worker. Can he throw a pass? Is he accurate with the ball? Does he have big enough hands so he doesn't fumble? So I just don't think Cam has the ability to be good. So this all feels like a waste to me. It feels like a waste of getting excited about hiring another coach. It feels like a waste to think about spending money in free agency or drafting players around Cam. And I see a lot of people that have been saying on social media, they've been talking about, well, should the Titans for sure be out of the market of a quarterback at number one? And I can tell you the difference between what I would do and what they're going to do. Absolutely. They are out of the market at quarterback at number one. Now, I haven't studied these quarterbacks enough to sit there and say, you know what, Mendoza is that guy. I'll say this. I've seen Mendoza play 2 weeks in a row. He throws a much more accurate pass than Cam Ward does. That said, this roster does stink. There are a lot of holes on the roster that have to get filled, and you don't have any extra assets, and you won't trade Simmons, so the only way to do it is to move back. Like, that's the only way. So I see the problem. It's just, if Cam sucks, if Cam's a backup, then it doesn't matter what you do. It's not going to make that much of a difference. Well, if we get this coach, and if we sign these guys in free agency, and if we draft this guy, and it's like, and if he gets all his passes batted to the line of scrimmage, then what does it matter? So that's where I am when it comes to the Titans. I do want to commend Jeffrey Simmons. I thought Jeffrey Simmons played his ass off today. And I think Jeffrey Simmons has played his ass off the entire season. You know, I am a being fair, give credit where credit is due. I have been very hard on Simmons for both his production and his obnoxiousness over the years. And I will give Simmons credit because he is leading that defense and they play hard. They did not pack it in, whether it was Simmons, Cody Barton made a nice play on a sack. Cedric Gray made a very nice play today. They've got no help in the secondary, and they're doing it all up front. Granted, they played Davis Mills today and not C.J. Stroud. But I did see Simmons all worked up on the sideline during the game, and you could see he was yelling at the offense, but I think in particular J.C. Latham, who it sounds like Simmons gets on a lot. At some point, the Titans offense is going to have to give their defense at least a little bit of a break. Like, the defense is going to have to step up every single game to keep it competitive like this. And then in the end, it's just not enough. At some point, the offense is going to have to counterbalance that. And that's how Cam wins over the team. Not the, well, we picked him number one. He's our guy, so we'll say he's our guy. But, hey, Cam goes out there, and Cam steps up and delivers a victory that the defense needed their help. And if not, it could get ugly because that's what happens on bad teams, especially bad teams that's being coached by, let's just call it what it is. They're being coached by a substitute teacher. I mean, Mike McCoy, he's just there to collect a check for the rest of the year, and then he's moved on. I mean, he probably doesn't even have a nameplate on his office door. If I had to get, he's probably like, yeah, I'm getting out. I mean, fuck this. They're not going to keep me. This team sucks. I'll go and do the press conferences, and I'll go through the motions and get us through the season, and I'll do the best I can. But as far as us winning any football games, I mean, that's not us actually improving. Not going to happen. All right, let's get to your reaction here on the program, here on Postgame Live. Your thoughts on the Titans. And again, they almost went to overtime today, which is a step in the right direction and a positive step because instead of actually going to overtime, or even worse, winning in overtime or regulation, they lost and they keep their draft spot. And it's just like Joey from Bellevue says, at the very top, saying, number one pick loading, number one pick again. I think the Titans are going to get the number one overall pick. I think the Titans will win another game this year. I don't know what game that's going to be, and I don't know what the circumstances surrounding the game that they're going to win is going to be. But I do think they'll win another game this year. Maybe it's the New Orleans game. They stink. But they will win another game, and they will go 2-15. And I think they will have the number one overall pick. And I absolutely think that's a possibility. Joey from Bellevue says, keep drafting a quarterback every year until you hit on one. I used to kind of believe on that. I understand the theory. The problem is that at some point a quarterback does need a team around it to nurture the quarterback. It's not as simple as, I think you can do that with coaches. Like, I think if you hire a coach and you realize right away, like Brian Callahan, you realize this guy's a fucking moron, it's like, okay, move on. But I don't think necessarily you can do that with quarterbacks, because at some point you do have to draft other players to go around the quarterback. Tom Brady in 2019 was the quarterback in New England, and that New England team was not very good. And they won the division and they got to the playoffs, but that was all because they had Tom Brady. Well, Tom Brady's the greatest quarterback who ever lived. So Tom Brady can do that. Most guys can't. So there's a lot of talk about Whitty in the chat saying, we are way too reactionary. By the way, I could be wrong about this. I think the term is reactive. What are we supposed to do? Not watch the games? Not watch all the passes batted down at the line of scrimmage? Not watch Cam throw it 3 yards behind Tajay Spears on a check down? Not watch Cam miss a wide fucking open Mason Kinsey that would have given the Titans the lead in the second half and would have put pressure on Davis Mills and put pressure on the Texans? Are we just supposed to pretend that didn't happen? You can do that. You can pretend it didn't happen. I am not going to do that. I am going to be a realist, and I am going to say, hey, right now, Cam, he made one throw today that if I was a Titan fan would give me any hope that Cam can be a QB1 in the future, and that was the one to Chig at the end of the game. Which, again, I'm not taking away from Cam. I'm not saying, like, hey, don't give Cam credit for the throw he made. I am saying he made that one throw. I need more. Sanchez says we watched the whole game. Whitty's good, man. I don't want to knock. It's very hard to imagine an intelligent and rational person coming to the conclusions that Whitty comes to. Hey, let's be nice in the chat, folks. Tom says, please tell me you are going to watch Sam Darnold play next Sunday. I do believe I am going to the game. I've actually got the game on right now, Seattle and the Rams. The Rams up 14-3. Sam Darnold has an interception that led to a Rams touchdown. I felt like Cooper Kupp was interfered with on the play. That's just me. But we shall see how the Sam Chise does. And trust me, if Sam Darnold doesn't play well this week and they lose to the Rams, who might be the favorites in the NFC, I'm sure Twitter will let me know about it. But I have faith in Sam Darnold. I do think I am going to go next week. I obviously did not go to the game today. I haven't gone to a game this season. I haven't gone to a game since Malik Willis and the Green Bay Packers came in and just took the bone out of the Titans' ass. So that was September of last year. I do think I'm going to the game next week. Maddie says not taking the Giants trade will cause them to regret not. I mean, the way the Titans tell it, as far as I'm concerned, is like the Giants trade wasn't as good as PK or Adam Schefter was reporting that it was. That being said, I don't necessarily believe the Titans. Again, Adam Schefter, he probably talked to the Giants, and the Giants probably said this is what we offered. I think it would be very difficult to look at that Giants trade and to not say, yeah, we fucked up. Again, Mike Borgonzi, he thinks he's drafted the next Patrick Mahomes. So if he thinks he's drafted the next Patrick Mahomes, he's going to believe until you get to that point like Mariota in Denver, where it's just like, hey, man, I know you want to believe this guy's going to be a star, but it ain't happening. There will have to be a point. That'll come years down the road. But when it comes to right now, I think most people would say, yeah, you should have taken the Giants trade. In fact, I think most people at the time thought, you probably should have taken the Giants trade. Curtis says, we need to stop trying to win. We need to do what Cincinnati did for Joe Burrow, throwing the game, losing, make him see it, make him throw all the time, make him read. The problem is that Cincinnati could play Ryan Finley at quarterback and get away with it. because they knew that they were going to draft their next quarterback anyways. You, and I am a Titan fan, so I am included in this, but you and we all have to hope that Cam actually is better than a lot of us think, because then it will actually mean that they could be good down the road. Kevin says, who should be the quarterback for the Titans in 2026? Well, that's a really good question, because if I would say define should. Who should the quarterback be? I'll put it to you like this. If I were to just say, how good is this guy going to be at his peak versus how good is this guy going to be at his peak? That's one discussion that we would have to have. If both players max out and are as good as they can be, who's going to be better? And Cam Ward, because he does have talent, Cam Ward, I think, would be better than a lot of guys if he were to reach his maximum potential. That said, I don't think he ever will, and I don't think he'll ever be accurate enough. I think Mac Jones right now in San Francisco is better than Cam Ward will ever be. So when you ask me who should be the quarterback in 2026, I have to take into account that I already have Cam Ward on the team, even though it was a draft pick that I would not have made last year. And I can't go back and sign Sam Darnold, whom I would have signed in the offseason, because he's on the Seahawks and he's been so good, they're not letting him go. So it has to be somebody that is realistically out there that the Titans can either draft because they'll have the number one pick, like a Fernando Mendoza, or somebody that realistically will be on the market either as a free agent or a trade piece. I think I'd rather have Mac Jones. When you're asking what I should do or would do, I think I'd rather have Mac Jones. I think what I would do is I would try to trade Cam. You're going to get pennies on the dollar. But if I got hired as general manager tomorrow, so I didn't draft him, I think at the end of the year, I would try to trade Cam for a first-round pick. I'm not going to get the Giants offer. I'm not going to get that big haul I would have had if I never picked him. But I think I would try to get a first-round pick in exchange for Cam. Then I would compare Mendoza, what I think he's going to become, to Mac Jones, and I probably would trade out of the first pick and use one of the picks acquired, because it's going to cost you a second-round pick to get Mac Jones. Use that second-round pick on Mac Jones. So I would get 3 second-round picks this year, as part of the trade to move out of 1 from 1 to 5 or whatever it is. And then I would have Mac Jones as a quarterback. That's me. But I think Mac Jones is better than Cam Ward. One person says, don't put Cam in the same breath as Tannehill. Cam is more like Jamarcus Russell. I think Cam personally is like Kyler Murray. That's the kind of quarterback that I think he's going to be like in terms of production. Now, I always say when it comes to comparing quarterbacks, are we comparing play style or are we comparing ability? Because if we're a play style or production, because if we're comparing production, you can compare Peyton Manning to Lamar Jackson. But the play style of Peyton Manning compared to the play style of Lamar Jackson is very, very different. When it comes to Cam, and you ask me for a certain play style of what that quarterback can become, I think of Baker Mayfield as probably the best case scenario for what Cam can become. The problem is Baker was always better and more accurate with the football, even as a rookie, in which Baker was rookie of the year, than Cam Ward has been this year. I think, long story short, when it comes to Cam and who he reminds me of, or what I think I'm looking at Blake Bortles. That was the guy that when I went to training camp, when I went for one day, and I watched Cam throw 3 interceptions, and I saw the inaccuracy of the passes, and I said, this reminds me of Blake Bortles at Central Florida. Now, Cam is a more fluid athlete throwing off platform than Blake Bortles was. But Cam certainly doesn't have Blake Bortles' size. They both have very good arm strength. They both have very poor accuracy. Blake Bortles did win a handful of games in the NFL with solid coaching and a good team around him. But in the end, and the Titans were the first team to figure this out, if you put Blake Bortles back up against the wall, 9 times out of 10, he wasn't going to make you pay. And that's what I see with Cam. And it's all because he's not accurate and he turns the ball over. And Blake Bortles, by all accounts, seems like a great guy. But when push came to shove in his career, he had a great arm, very athletic, big frame. But when push came to shove, he turned the ball over. And he wasn't accurate. And that's what I see in Cam. So if you're asking me, hey, don't talk about Tannehill when you compare him. No. Talk about Jamarcus Russell. The guy I talk about when it comes to Cam Ward in a comparison is Blake Bortles. That's who I see. Hyde says Cam doesn't run enough. They should design run plays for him. The problem with that is Cam doesn't protect the ball. So while Cam did have that nice scramble, know that a lot of quarterbacks who aren't Lamar Jackson have nice scrambles every now and then. Cam does not protect the ball. So if you start asking Cam, you're designing RPOs and you want Cam to run it, A, he's going to get popped, and B, he doesn't protect the football, so now he's fumbled it, now the other team has it. That's going to be an issue. Period. David says the Titans need to go whatever it takes to score points. They have a rookie quarterback and 2 rookies starting at receiver, and that is a recipe for the worst team in the NFL. So, I mean, I agree with you that you're not traditionally going to win with a rookie quarterback. And I know Jaden Daniels won some last year, and I know C.J. Stroud won some the year before that. I remember when I worked with Floyd, and he used to say, you're not going to win with a rookie quarterback. I'm just here to tell you, you can say whatever you want. You're not going to win with a rookie quarterback. And I pushed back, and I was like, well, Ben Roethlisberger won as a rookie, and this one won as a rookie, and that one won. And every time he'd look at me and be like, okay. And that's how I feel now when it comes to winning with a rookie quarterback. I'm just like, you're not going to win with a rookie quarterback. That said, how many times is a rookie quarterback supposed to get a pass batted down at the line of scrimmage? Because he drops his arm angle at 6'2" and throws it right into the hands of a 6'4" defensive lineman. And I don't know what you're supposed to do. One person says, it kills me how some fans in the media get so mad when you tell the truth about Cam Ward. It's obvious he has bust written all over him, yet some in the media still refuse to see it. So I think he's going to be a bust. I thought he's going to be a bust the whole time. I didn't think he was talented enough to come in here and do what they were asking him to do. I thought his Pee-wee coach program was, a moron, and clearly that was true. And I just, I don't trust the direction of the team with Chad Brinker and Mike Borgonzi. They don't have the experience, and I think Cam's going to be a bust. To say that Cam is for sure going to be a bust, I'm not ready to go there yet. I get it. I think he's going to be a bust. If I was putting odds on it, I'd say it's very likely he's going to be a bust, but I'm not ready to say just all in, he's a total bust. Curtis says, the more I hear about Floyd, the more I miss him. Solid general manager. What's funny when it comes to Floyd? Robbie Stanley and I got in an argument around draft time this year because Tedoroa McMillan at Arizona ran a slow 40 time. Now, I don't know what Tedoroa McMillan's stats are, but I want to say he ran something like, I want to say he ran something like a 4.8, just bad. And I saw that and I'm like, well, take him off the board. And people are like, but Jared, he's an absolute dog at receiver. Trust me. I'm like, fine. But I'm not taking a receiver in the top of the first round who can't run. Now, look, Carolina did. That's their business. And Bill Polian said, we did not at Indianapolis. We did not take receivers. who did not run a 4.5 or faster. And I told Robbie Stanley that that's what Bill Polian said, Gold Jacket Hall of Famer. And Robbie said, well, I'll take Mike Evans, who ran a 4.6. And Jerry Rice didn't run the fastest 40. Right. And what that means is that Bill Polian would have passed on Mike Evans. But that doesn't mean that Bill Polian would have passed on Mike Evans and not taken a good player. It just means he would have passed on that one exception who ended up being a good player. One thing I learned from Floyd was you have to kind of set standards for what you expect people to be based off of what their 40 times are, what their size is, what their body type says they should be, and every time I've seen the Titans try to fudge it and try to say something like Aaron Brewer at 270 pounds can start at left guard, I've seen it blow up in their faces. Now, there will be an occasional exception that bucks the trend. But as Tom Landry used to tell Bill Parcells, if you draft exceptions, pretty soon your entire team is full of exceptions. Well, you got a right tackle you drafted 7th, who's an exception because you thought he was going to play left tackle. Now he didn't. Now you have to spend $50 million in free agency to fill the left tackle void, and he's still too big and too fat to play right tackle. Can't take exceptions. You took a 6'2" quarterback with the number 1 overall pick. And now you're asking him to throw sidearm from the pocket, and he's getting his hands batted down at the line of scrimmage. So when you've got standards, you may miss on a guy or two. Jeffrey Simmons would have never been drafted to the Titans if Floyd Reese was the general manager. But neither would Corey Davis. Neither would Caleb Farley. They wouldn't have traded for Julio Jones because of how the old man used to feel about injuries. And it does kind of remind me of, somebody with the Titans asked me, gosh, I want to say 10 months ago, maybe something around there. They said, what's kind of the main thing you took away from Floyd? And I was like, well, there's a lot of things out there that I took away. The number one thing I would say is that the job of the general manager is to protect the coach, or excuse me, to protect the team from the coach. So that the coach can't come in there and say, hey, I know that I can coach him and I can. It's like, no, don't do that. That's the big one takeaway. Let me say this, though. When it comes to the game today, I'm not a big silver lining guy. But the silver lining that I do see when it comes to what happened today, and granted, it doesn't take away the pain of not taking the Giants trade or anything like that, but it was entertaining. Cam did make that one throw, and they still lost and keep their draft position. And that, I think, is the good thing. So we can't play the press conferences live because, well, I guess we can't play the press conferences live. The Titans want to run the press conferences live. So what I do is I go back and I look at what the scribes just have put out there, just to see if there's anything interesting as far as the notes are concerned. And so I'm looking at TD's Twitter right now, just seeing what they said. And apparently JC Latham said that there was a cadence issue today with the false starts. How can there be a cadence issue? You're at home. Did you not practice? That I'm not sure I totally get. Let's see. TD says, Simmons says he's tired of sugarcoating things and is sick of the Titans not playing complimentary football. Boy, that feels like a call out. That feels like a call out of the offense. I'm tired of sugarcoating it. We're not playing complimentary football. We played good defense today. We need the offense to go out and play good offense. That seems pretty evident. And apparently Calvin Ridley is out for the year as he broke his fibula. So I think we may have seen the end of L'Jarius Sneed and Calvin Ridley in Titans uniforms as far as the let, ran, cook offseason is concerned. Oh, that's very kind of you to say. Rockdo says, all of us who listen to Jared and the GM are smarter because of it, not just concerning football. Agreed. And there were a lot of things in my life over the years where I was like, man, I really miss Floyd, and I wonder what Floyd would say. And I definitely think when it comes to this team, they could really use Floyd Reese and his advice. And unfortunately, he's not with us anymore. That's it for us today on Postgame Live. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Good numbers. You know, I worry about with the Titans being so bad. I worry about everybody just tuning out all the time. But again, good numbers today. I appreciate everybody. Again, like and subscribe when it comes to this program. Tell your friends, again, just the God's honest truth when it comes to the Titans. Did you hear, by the way, and I think I may get into this more tomorrow, did you people hear about what Titans radio has done? I was stunned by this. So for years, I hosted the award-winning pregame show, the non-network pregame show on 102.5. And our pregame shows would go from 9:30 to 11:30 for the noon kickoffs. And then I'd get in the car and I'd drive home and listen to the 104.5 pregame show up until I got home. And then I'd watch a game with my dad. And not that I found the Titans 104.5 pregame show to be all that insightful or interesting, but you got to listen to something. And they had this one segment that I did like, where they would bring on Paul Kaharski and Jim Wyatt, and Rhett Bryan would sit there and say, okay, Titans Insiders with Jim Wyatt and Paul Kaharski. And then when Paul Kaharski left the zone, Buck filled in and took that spot, and it was Jim Wyatt and Buck. And I'd listen to them on the way, you know, from our pregame show, the award-winning pregame show. By the way, the award-winning pregame show that won an award, me, Derek, and Chris for Nashville's best sports coverage, and Chase McCabe put his name on the trophy. And I thought I thought it was a station award. And then one of the people there was like, no, that was the pregame show. I was like, really? But I digress anyways. So apparently the Titans have gutted the Jim Wyatt Buck conversation on the pregame show. And we know why they've gutted it. For whatever excuse, bullshit comments they'll say, they gutted it because they don't want anybody who's not just pumping sunshine all the time. So apparently, instead of Buck and Jim Wyatt breaking down the game on the pregame show, they have decided to put on a stadium update and Titans in the community. Because apparently they don't have enough fluff horse shit going on there. And word on the street, and this is the juicy thing, word on the street is some of the business suits with the Titans, so not the football people, not the football PR staff, not the Brinkers, not the coaches, apparently, word on the street is some business suits of the Titans are so mad at Buck, and I don't even know what Buck did, but apparently they're so mad at Buck that they tried to yank his credential. That's the word on the street. So I don't know what's going on over there. I've said this all year. I feel like they are majoring in the minors, worrying about who's playing press conferences when they need to worry about, did you fuck up the number one pick? But that's, again, the team broadcast. Apparently, they can't even have 1 ounce of truth on the team broadcast. Jim Wyatt works for the team, and they can't have him on there because I guess he'll be too real. And that's the state of the Titans. And that's why they never get any better. Because in the offseason, it becomes a full-on echo chamber, and they tell themselves everything that they did is good and is going to work, and you'll see Rand Carthon was being sabotaged by Vrabel, but you'll see one day, and then they realize as soon as the ball kicks off, that's not true. So, make of that what you will. All right, that's it for us. We're out of here. Great show. Thanks again to Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. We'll be live tomorrow at 2 like we always are. Like and subscribe. Tell your friends. Stillman and Company. Have a great rest of the day. Go Sam Darnold against the Rams. Enjoy that one. Stillman and Company. We'll see everybody live tomorrow at 2.